Help me welcome Jamie D.
Good evening, I'm Jamie, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since November 1st of 2000. So 2020 actually was something good this year did happen last year. It's easy to be witty for 5 seconds or 3 minutes than it is to be witty for an hour. So I hope I can live up to that. I'm gonna set my clock because I want to make sure I get sober well into this. You know, we're supposed to tell what it was like, what happened, and what it was like now. Obviously, what it was like sucked, or I wouldn't be in an AA meeting on a Saturday night. I would still be about 3/4 of a way into a fifth of bourbon and having fun out at the club. And I know even during a shutdown, I would have made my way to it. So, you know, I always kind of feel guilty about saying this sometimes, but in my early childhood, I'm not gonna lie, it was good. My parents never divorced. I don't come from a broken home. There was no physical abuse, no mental, no emotional abuse. I had that Donna Reed, Dick Van Dyke family in the beginning. There's always like to say that in the beginning. I felt safe. I felt accepted. I felt I could breathe. I knew my parents were there for me. You know, my parents had a couple named Rick and Sharon that they had been best friends with for 20 years. And actually Rick and Sharon were just like surrogate parents to me, and they had a son and a daughter around my brother and my brother's age and my age. So it was, life growing up was actually really goddamn good for a while. I always say for a while, and that's what gets to this. When I was about 13, this is where I get my dramatic side from. I had an aunt pass away, and her dying wish was that the family would get together and go to church for a day other than her funeral. So, she's that eccentric aunt, Aunt Bernice, that was her name. And so, before then, the word God really was just kind of loosely used in my house. Alcohol was very prevalent. They would, drink to play cards, spades. We would be out on the boat. Fishing, hunting. It was part of what the book always, in one of the stories in the book, and I don't ever tell you where the story is because you need to read it and find it. So any quotes, they're in there, but just find them. Where the book talks about drinking being conviviality, that's what it was growing up. So I remember after this aunt passed away, my brother and I were woken up on a Sunday morning by my parents, and we were carted away to this little Southern Baptist church, probably about the size of this room. And for the first time I was exposed to religion. And at 13 years old, I won't lie, I sat there in that pew going, what the fuck? I mean, that's what was going through my head. And I'm sorry, I do curse a lot. If you got a problem with that, talk to your sponsor, not me, because I will give you a resentment. I've done that, and it's fun. Better to give one than to get one. And I will say drugs are part of my story, although alcohol was the beginning, the middle, and the end of it all. Anyway, I would sit there. Why would these people sit here and cry and raise their hand while this man screams and yells at them from a pulpit? And I what they were selling, I wasn't buying, and it would happen about every other Sunday, about a couple times a month. And then it got to be a few more times. And I remember looking at my mom they call it the invitation. If you've ever been to a Southern Baptist church, they play this somber hymn, and people come up and kneel on the altar, or they come up and they pray with the preacher. I wanted to know what the hell was going on up there. And I remember turning to my mom and going, what's going on? What are they doing up there? What's going on? Next thing I know, I'm up there being prayed at. I guess I got saved. And then I was dunked underwater. And my head just was swimming. All I asked was, what are they doing up there? And that afternoon, that Sunday when we got home, my father and my mother, they were different. And I could see it and I could feel it. And within a week, I remember my father going to the liquor cabinet and going to the sink and pouring out all the alcohol. And at 13 years old, all I can remember thinking was, there goes the fun. And I was right. Because at that point, everything about my family dynamic changed. I kind of just went along with it. I always knew I was gay. I always knew something was different about me. I didn't know what it was, but I had still felt safe at home. I still felt okay. I still could breathe, even though I knew something was different about me that was not with my brother or not with my other friends or other family members. That's when things started changing the more we went to church, and I kind of pegged what it was. And through this, I watched my parents dissolve and break off a 20-year friendship over the church, over religion. I carried that resentment into, I think, my third or fourth inventory. And in the back of my head, even though I felt the same way my parents' friends did, I wanted nothing to do with this. In the back of my head as a 13-year-old child, I thought, if they will throw away friends they've had for 20 plus years, how quick will they throw somebody away that they've only known for 13? And that began my ability to multiple personalities and acting. I would act as if I acted like I believed what was being preached to us. I played the role, and I played the role really well for a very long time until I couldn't play it anymore. I no longer felt safe. I felt like I had to be someone else to keep a roof over my head. I felt like I had to lie to my parents about who I was, because now I had to, because what I'm hearing from the pulpit and seeing from them is the way I feel is unnatural, and who I am is this horrible sin, and the whole time I don't believe it. Now, I was such a good little actor. I started playing the piano for the church. I started singing with the church choirs, and I found out through that music was my escape. I could escape through music. I could hide. I could still be seen, but I could disappear at the same time. And that even carried over into my sober life. I want to be seen, but I want to be invisible. It's really weird. At the same time, I want both. I'm an alcoholic. I want extremes. I want one or the other. I need instant gratification, and that's not fast enough. I played that role really well for a very long time. And I would always, I found a way I could manipulate my father by playing the Jesus card. I could get him to do whatever I wanted, because it just Jesus this and that. And they quickly whisked my brother and I away to private school, took us out of public school. We went to Highview Baptist Christian School. When I say they went in, head first, full force into their church, they did. Now, my father, later on, we would find out, was addicted to pain pills. My brother is a recovering heroin addict. My mother, to this day, has never had a drink, but she probably needs a couple. In fact, she was one of those that wouldn't even take a pain pill. But here, my brother and my father and I later in life would be those ones that, it says take 2, we take 6. It wasn't until last year in 2019 when my uncle passed away that the woman took a Xanax, and it's only because one of my aunts and I made her take one because she was so stressed out. And all I remember going, God, I wish I could still do that. That's still 19 years sober then, and my brain was like, God, I want to pop one of those. No, but I got to follow my prescription. I did that, agreed to go to that school because I felt like I had no choice. But I found a way to go to a public school. And there was a performing arts high school where I grew up. And I wanted to go. My father wouldn't let us go to public school. So I remember going to him because I was so involved in the church, in the music at church. I remember going to him and saying, Dad, if you let me go to public school, this one, because they teach music and it's going to be a focused school where I'm going to be in music all day, it will help me with Jesus, help me singing and praising the Lord. And it worked. I began to be a master manipulator when it came to that. Going back into public school now, knowing there was something different about me. And if you are familiar with any kind of performing arts high school or performing arts education, there's going to be plenty of little gay boys there. and plenty of lesbians over in the tech department. So yeah, her name was Stephanie Markham. I love her. She's one of my good friends. And so now I'm at a new school. I'm back in public school, and I'm now around people who are open about who they are. Of course, I'm still hiding it and lying about it, but I'm around people who are. So I'm pretending to be this one person at school, pretending to be this one person at church, and then going to the little gay park for a little fun and pretending to be this on the other side. And it was just this circle and this circle. And the whole time, all I could feel again is that any moment my world was going to break. And mind you, I hadn't drank yet. For the occasional little sip before my father got saved was a little bit different. I was 16 years old when I had my first drunk. My brother's a few years older than me, so he was able to get me a little vodka, because for some reason I thought screwdrivers were like the bougie drink back then. This is like the late 80s, sorry. And I remember that my parents were out of town for a church convention, because that's what they did. And because I was such a good little Christian son, they thought they would think it was okay for me to be home alone for a weekend by myself. And so I threw a little house party with some of my friends from the performing arts school. And it was my first drunk. And I remember everything disappeared. I could breathe again. I didn't feel scared. I felt safe. I was enough. I wasn't second place. All of that just went away. And I spent the next 11 years chasing that feeling and never found it again. I found it once with alcohol and never found it again, but I continued to drink. I don't tell a lot of drunkalogs because I like to talk about more how I felt. Because to me, it's the same script, different cast with all of us. Now, I will say this: I never wrecked a car. I never went to jail. I never got fired from a job. I had a lot of nevers when I got here that a lot of you guys and a lot of people I know didn't. I was also a pharmaceutical distribution salesperson, which basically is my bougie way of saying drug dealer. I never got caught, and the only difference is between people who did get caught and me is I didn't get caught. I never got busted. So I was never reaping the consequences of my using and my drinking. And trust me, I probably should still be in jail for some of the shit I did. And, but I got lucky. I got very lucky, never got caught. I could function fucked up, and did. And my friend Jerry here that can attest, he'd seen me bump up in the middle of a food court at the Quail Springs Mall in Oklahoma City and not give a shit. And how I didn't get busted, I have no idea. Going through high school, again, made it through that with this, just as much as I could be someone else, trying to pretend for this person to be this person to be that. There was this person in high school, we were very competitive in the music department. His name was Lawrence. He would always get the lead role, and I would always be his understudy. And again, that set many resentments, because what would always happen is he would never go on and I would always have to go on. So this feeling like an option in a world of priorities set in at a very young age, and it was just a cycle in my life. I like to think I was pretty good in music because I eventually got accepted into college for it, and with a voice degree at Millikan University in Illinois. So I, finally get away to college. I'm 18 years old. I'm away from my parents. Now I can really start to become who I wanted to be. I started opening the closet door a little bit more, and of course you go to college, there's the parties and and I won't lie, in the beginning the drinking was fun. It was a lot of fun. I didn't have that many consequences. My bills were paid. My parents were paying for college. As long as I showed up and did my schoolwork, I could go out and drink drink like that and have a good time. And I'm not gonna lie, it was fun in the beginning. After my first year of college, I came home and I met a boy, and he wasn't the nicest of persons. He knew I was in the closet, and to me, he was just supposed to be a fuck. But he quickly found out that I was still in the closet and was not telling my parents. And he used that over my head for quite a while for me not to break things off with him that summer. he would threaten to tell my parents and this, that, and the other. And I guess in a really bad drunken stupor, I had it. And we got in this knockdown, drag-out fight in my parents' front yard. And he went to pull off in his car, and I reared back and put my hand through. I mean, now the window was cracked, so it's not like I hit a full window, so it would break a lot easier. I'm not that butch. I reached back, hand, to punch him, hand through the windshield, or hand through the driver's side window. And of course, my father standing in the middle of the yard, not knowing what the hell is going on. And I remember, after this guy, drug off, my dad was like, what the hell is going on, Jamie? And it just came out. I'm trying to break up with my boyfriend and he won't let me. And it was like, oh shit. Just outed myself to my father. And I knew exactly what to do. I said, Dad, I'm gay, but I don't want to be, and I know Jesus can fix it. That's the only card I knew how to play with my father to take the heat off. We know those people say, be careful what you say. I quickly was whisked away and put into conversion therapy. And again, not wanting to be there, but I knew the only way to keep the money for college coming in and a roof over to get the things I wanted, I knew I had to lie. I knew I had to be, I knew I had to be someone else. I knew I had to be what they wanted me to be. And the whole time, the whole next year, while having to do that conversion therapy, all I did was plan my escape. That's truly all I did, was sat back and I planned my escape, how I was going to get away from my family. And I eventually got a job with this theater in Wichita, Kansas, that had an actor's house that you could live there for free. And I went. I had to get away. It was there I really got to be who I was. Living in an actor's house. At 20, I think I was only 20 then. Of course, you're living with all ranges of ages of people, so there was tons and tons of alcohol. That summer, I still kept in contact with my family and would still kind of play to them a little bit just to keep the car payment. That's what I did. And that summer, I found out I was HIV positive. And that's kind of when my drinking really kicked in, because back 27 years ago it still was a death sentence. And I'm very dramatic, y'all. If y'all don't know that, and some people do know that. I'm waiting for Bradley to give me the tear movement. He's going to direct me here in a minute. And all I remember was, I'm going to die. I'm going to get sick. But something about my parents' religion kind of kicked in, and I think it was a mix of a lot of alcohol and a little bit of hallucinogens that I had been taking, more than it really was Jesus coming down from the sky and talking to me. But I had convinced myself, and I always tell this because Janice made me promise, if y'all know Miss Janice, she made me promise that I have to tell this story and every time I tell my story, because it's her favorite thing. In this drunken stupor, I really believed that Jesus visited me and told me that he was going to heal me from HIV, and that I was to go in front of his people and let them know that. So the good little boy that I am, I had pretended so much, I finally believed the lie. I think that's what it was. I was also really, really, really messed up. Show up at my parents' church, and by this time they had graduated from a little small Baptist church to a really large Baptist church. And that Sunday morning, drunk and a lot of other chemicals in my body, got up in front of that entire church and testified that Jesus had told me he was going to heal me from being HIV positive and that I was not going to die. Needless to say, that didn't go over very well with my family. My mother literally passed out. My father just walked out. My aunt's on her knees speaking in tongues. And we took my grandmother to the hospital because we thought she was having a heart attack. Okay, it was just a little stress. It wasn't a heart attack. She didn't die. But that's kind of some of the stuff I do when I'm drunk. That's just one of my little drunkalogs. When I'm that messed up, I lose all sense of reality. And here I am, I won't lie, here I am, it's 27 years later and I still got it and ain't gone nowhere. So much for that little scene that I thought I had witnessed. That's really when my parents' relationship and I was about done. Because now they knew I was no longer, living this little Christian lifestyle of being straight that they thought I was for so long that I had pretended. And my father and I had a big blow, blew up with each other. And he's like, if you leave and you go back to that lifestyle, we're done. I'm like, okay, peace. I'll call your bluff. I'm drunk. Of course I'm going to call your bluff. And I did. I packed up my little red Mazda pickup truck, and I went back to Wichita, Kansas, to work for this theater. And again, the drinking only got worse. Thank God, around that time they did the first triple therapy for the HIV meds. It was Crixivan, AZT, and Delaverdine, I think. And I got involved in that with the Wichita State University. From Wichita, of course, I've done the geographicals. Nothing worked there. I was still less than. I still had. I'm hiding my sexuality with my parents. Now I've got to hide that I'm HIV positive from you because of the stigma that was still there. And, I'm still the understudy in all of these shows that I'm in, but I end up going on all the time because the lead role can't get their shit together. And here I am, fucked up, drunk, and coked up off my head, and I can still walk on a stage. I was very highly functioning. I end up making my way to Oklahoma City for a boy, and we broke up the day I moved there for him. And now I have no place to go. So I lived in this little place called the Havana Inn. So I don't know if you've ever been to Oklahoma City. If you have, the ones who are going, oh. Yeah, so I lived in the Havana Inn. It's basically a bathhouse you rent by the day instead of by the 6 hours, basically is what it is. And it's a gay hotel. It's not there anymore. I heard it's gone. It's so sad. So eventually, crashing, ended up moving in with this drag queen, now I've got to start doing something else to support my alcoholism and my drug addiction. So I start bartending at the bar, and I start selling drugs, and the music that I had loved so much started to go by the wayside. I then met the next boy, met the next one of my life. And then he was having an affair on his husband with me, so I was basically the fuck, but I thought I was the good little boyfriend, and he ended up breaking things off with me to start dating this little nurse that had moved to Oklahoma City, and that didn't go over very well with me. And the good codependent enabler that this nurse was one night in a drunken stupor, I was reared off and said, I'm going to do what I have to do. And I think this nurse thought I was going to commit suicide or something because he came running after me. Eventually they broke up, and this little nurse and I began to party together and drink a lot together at Leslie's Painted Desert. And eventually he would help me get sober. And if I've been lucky that this is my first go around, and I have the utmost respect for people who go out and come back in. Because if it wasn't for somebody who had not gone out and come back in, I would have never got here. Because Jerry was out doing some more experimenting when he met me. So I either helped further it faster for him or he was there to bring me back in. And I always have to bring that up because I'm one of those people that chronically deals with why is this happening to me. And I met that guy and got hurt specifically to meet someone to get me into Alcoholics Anonymous and to help me find my way sober. And I remember the change in all of that when it happened. We were well into a lot of alcohol and a lot of other stuff. And he started the 12-step as we're fucked up. He ended up moving to Dallas to get sober. And I thank you so much, because if you wouldn't have called me daily like you did, I don't think I would be alive today. And he did. And that was my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous, was through somebody I knew. I don't think I would have got here alone or found my way by myself. At my first meeting, I won't lie, I was drunk and high as a kite. But, I still picked up a Desire chip. But walking in here, I felt something. I heard people begin to talk like me and to begin to share stories like me and begin their distrust in what I thought God was and what I thought a higher power, or what I thought, we'll use the word higher power later. And so I began to drive back and forth from Oklahoma City just to come to meetings. Still messed up, still fucked up, but lying about my sobriety date. I said it was August 27th because that was the first day I'd come to a meeting. Y'all, that was bad. So I kind of thought that was your date because you showed up the first day. I didn't know it was the first day you went without drugs or alcohol. I did fix that about 2 years into my sobriety. I told the truth and fessed up, and God, I was so nervous. I was so sure you guys were going to kick me out when I fessed up about my real sobriety date being November 1st. The only thing that happened was Kimberly and I don't know if you guys know Kimberly, she and I used to pick up our chip the same month, and she came up and was like, no, we don't get to pick our chip up together. That was like the worst thing that happened. And that's kind of life for me now. When I think the worst thing that I think is gonna happen never does. I would like to say when I first got here, everything was perfect and wonderful and all that. It wasn't. I still, when I thought getting sober, all the problems would go away. But let me just kind of briefly touch. All my yets happened in sobriety. And now that's what I like to talk about more, is sobriety, than talk about the drunk stuff. All of my yets happened here. I never buried a man. I never buried a lover or someone I was in love with when I was out using. I did that here in sobriety. I never got fired. I lost my job twice in sobriety. I just got it back because I was furloughed, but I was fired, full on fired once in sobriety, and furloughed another time in sobriety. I never wrecked a car out using. I flipped one upside down, stone cold sober. I never buried a parent. I did that here. All of those yets I had happen here. The only thing I have not done yet is gone to jail, but I have had a warrant for my arrest in sobriety. So, when I say you can do anything or go through anything sober, you really can, because I never dealt with that stuff drinking. And I always cringe and I hate when I hear people say, oh, my worst day sober is better than my best day drinking. I'm like, well, fuck you, you didn't do it right. Because let me tell you something, there was some hardcore times out drinking that it did work, and it was better than my worst day, because I never had to feel anything. In sobriety, I feel everything. I feel the happies, the highest of highs, and I feel the lowest of lows. And I didn't get that out using. I didn't get that out drinking. I didn't have to feel anything because I stayed drunk or with some kind of chemical in my body 24/7. So for those of you that I see why people do go back out, because sometimes it hurts so bad that that feels like an option. But I had a couple very good sponsors in the beginning that said to me that you don't have to do this, one, alone, which I had spent a lot of my life doing things alone, and two, you don't have to feel this way. Everything's temporary. Pain is inevitable in life. Painful things are going to happen. Painful situations are going to happen. But the misery part is the option, and that's to me, that's the meat of my sobriety. Is pain's going to happen. It's just how I deal with it and how I choose to rise above it. Now, have I done it perfect? No, I haven't done everything perfect in sobriety. I probably can sit here and promise you I've done everything the quite opposite in sobriety that I've been told to do, except for I didn't drink. I just didn't pick up that first drink. And it's more for the fear that I don't think I would die. I think I would still live. But I wouldn't come back, and I don't want to live like that again. Miserable and drunk, because now I know what feelings are. I didn't know what feelings were when I was out using. I used to mask. I had been using so long to hide who I was, and I remember when I first got sober, I always used to say, because I hadn't lost those jobs, I hadn't done that, the only thing I lost was me. That's how dramatic I was back then. The truth is I didn't even lose me, because I didn't even know who the hell I was when I got here. I grew up in sobriety. I became a young adult. I became a middler adult and a little bit older adult now in sobriety. And what I have found for me is that if I can find some semblance of willingness and some semblance of acceptance in any situation, then I got a shot. And a lot of you have heard me say this before. Willingness has not always looked like I wanted it, and acceptance has not always looked like liking it. You know, I'm here because I show up. I'm here because my friend Bryson and I have talked about this. I'm here because I wake up every morning and I make that conscious decision that today I'm going to stay sober. And I'll say that to myself, today I'm going to stay sober, tomorrow we'll talk about it. You know, I really do live that one day at a time. I know how powerless I know how powerless over alcohol I am. When I start, I can't stop. It's just like a chocolate chip cookie. I can't eat one, I eat a dozen. You know, I'm powerless over alcohol, and I know what kind of unmanageability it makes in my life. Who but an alcoholic, drunk up mess gets in front of a Baptist church and tells them Jesus healed them from being HIV positive? I mean, I've got dozens of those stories that sober people don't do. I tell my sober friends that story, my friends who aren't addicts or alcoholics, that story, and they cringe. I love when I tell an alcoholic because people go, I know something like that too, you know. And that's what I love about the program is I can come here and tell those kind of stories, and I'm not going to get judged. I feel safe again here. I feel safe here, which is all I wanted to do. I wanted to feel safe. I want to be able to breathe, and I want to feel accepted and loved, and I get that here. I was about 8 years sober, and my parents had reached out to me, because I hadn't really talked to them that much because they didn't care for my lifestyle. My brother had moved to Fort Worth. By this time now, my brother is a Southern Baptist preacher, and clean from his drug addiction through Jesus. And my parents want to come visit, and they want to make a big deal out of it because it's my birthday. And I'm like, no, you're fucking coming because my brother moved here. It has nothing to do with my birthday. So they get here, and I pick them up from the airport, and we have this huge blow up about the church and about Christianity and about why I don't go to church and why I don't believe in God and all this. And I'd worked with my sponsor quite a bit on this, and we weren't even out of DFW Airport to the toll where you pay to leave yet. And I pull the car over, and I turn in, and I let them know we're not doing this. I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. I will walk away. I'll never speak to you again. I'll drop you off at my brother's house, and I'm done, because my sobriety and my happiness is worth more than staying tied to blood family. And it was a decision my sponsor and I had talked about, and he didn't tell me I had to do. It was a decision I came on my own with the guidance of working the steps in AA, that I knew to stay sober, I could no longer participate in their insanity. And we get to my brother's house, and my mom was like, we'll be right back. So I guess she took him inside and ripped him a new one, because he came back out and apologized, and supposedly everything was going to be all good. And they actually hung out with me that week, and they went to dinner with some of my friends and I for my birthday. And for some reason, my dad, when my dad left, he would call out of the blue, which he never would do anymore. And I was thinking, where's the joke? Where's the trap? When's it coming? When's he going to revert to old behavior? And he would always ask me how my friend Jerry was doing. And finally, about the 4th or 5th phone call, I asked him, is there something you want to know about Jerry? Do you want to know something? And he just kind of got quiet. And eventually I said, do you want to know if he's my boyfriend? And he got real quiet. And he actually said, well, is he? And I'm like, no, he's not. He's just my friend. He's just a friend. And what shocked me is the next thing out of his mouth was like, well, do you have one? Now, here's my Southern Baptist deacon father, who we'd fought years asking me if I had a boyfriend. And I tell him no, and we had some other long talks, and finally he fessed up about his pain pill addiction, which I was very well aware of, because after I'd gotten sober, I knew that they weren't diabetic fits that he had been going to the hospital for. I kind of put 2 and 2 together. And so he and I got on a long talk about it, and I remember him saying how proud he was of me. And that was literally the first time in my life the man had ever said that. And he was proud of me for being sober. And he couldn't understand why I could do it without Jesus and without God. And my brother could do it only with the church, and he couldn't do it at all. And and the only thing that could come out of my mouth, and it was not me saying it, was whatever, it was the power that I believe in. I told him, well, what about doing both, Dad? Why can't you do both AA and at the same time, and the church at the same time? And he kind of got quiet, and I said, well, here's the deal. Go to a meeting and don't call me till you go to one. And I hung the phone up. It's the only advice I could give. The next day he calls, the phone's his, and I went, did you go to a meeting? He said, no. I said, go to a meeting, don't call me again until you do. And I hung up the phone. And I won't lie, I was getting a little bit of enjoyment out of that because I kind of felt like I had a little bit of power in the relationship again. The next thing is the phone rings, and it's my mom. And my mom goes, your father wants to talk to you. I said, has he gone to a meeting yet? She says, no. I said, I don't want to talk to him. She goes, I'm taking him to rehab. And so he gets on the phone. I said, okay, leave me the phone. Give him the phone. And we start talking. And, he was wanting to go to rehab. And he made a joke of saying, I wish you could be my sponsor. And I won't lie, I wanted to say yes so bad. Yes, Dad, I'll be your sponsor because I really would love to fuck you up on your fourth and fifth step. And really show you what kind of amends you need to make to me on the ninth step. But obviously I said no. He had about 8 to 9 months of sobriety before he died. And so for almost 9 months, I had the father I always wanted. And I wouldn't have got that if I wouldn't have come here, if I wouldn't have been sober. I wouldn't have known how to navigate boundaries and priorities. Because now I don't view myself as an option in a world of priorities anymore. I'm a priority in a world of options. And it's only because of sobriety that can be that way. Like I said, has sobriety been perfect? No, it hasn't. I've had my ups and downs. I've had my heart broken more times than I wish to care for. But I no longer have to stay in those situations. I do a quick inventory on it. I bitch and moan with friends about it. I talk to a sponsor about it, and I figure a solution. I find a solution now. I learn how to get into that part where I'm willing to turn my will and life over to the care of my higher power. I do my daily 10 steps. I sit back and throughout the day. One of the biggest things is people know I'm a smart ass and I love to smart off to people, but I've learned now before I do that, I go, do I have to, if I say this, this, and this, well, I have to make an amends later. I don't like making amends. So I kind of do 10 steps on the spot before I even open my mouth and yell at someone. Because there's nothing more embarrassing than being 20 years sober and have to go back and go, I apologize for my behavior, I do my best to live as if I'm the only big book somebody will ever see. I don't do it perfect. I was talking about 6 and 7 for just a kind of a second. So we're entirely ready to have God remove all our defects of character. You'll always hear people talk about, I'm participating in old behavior. Darling, if you're participating in old behavior, then it ain't old behavior. It's still current. I spend a lot of days and a lot of my time living in 6 and 7 because those behaviors in my life, even the old ones, can tend to creep back up if I don't stay on top of them. Like I said earlier in my story, I'm someone, instant gratification's not fast enough for me. I want things the way I want them, how I want them, without compromise. But sobriety's taught me that you do have to compromise. There are some compromises you can make as long as it doesn't affect your integrity, affect your life, or your financial people kind of bitched and moaned about 2020 and all this. I fucking loved it. I'm sorry. Actually, 2020 was a really nice year for me. I loved Zoom meetings. Hi there, Zoom world, or Facebook. I loved that because I could go to 5 different cities in one day. My friend Bryson can attest I wasn't in a good place in the very beginning of the year because of some situations. But when I get in those places where I'm having problems, I dive into meetings, and that Zoom, my first sponsor, or Benny, if anybody knew Benny, baby, what's the problem? Benny taught me the only way to fix a problem is to have the tools to fix it. So this year gave me Zoom. So, I didn't have to sit around and like this all damn day at home for a meeting at 6 o'clock when I could get on and be on one in Toronto, or I could be on one, I could jump on one at 3 a.m. in Sydney. I loved that. 2020 actually was a very good year for me spiritually. I got to learn a lot about myself. I use the word higher power just because it's the only way I can explain what I believe in. I don't believe in the old man that sits in a chair and judges. That's what I was brought up with my whole life. I loved when I got here that you gave me permission to find whatever power greater than myself works for me. For a long time, it was the group, it was the room. There were times it was a boy. There were times it was a job. I used whatever I could to stay sober. Now, sometimes it wasn't healthy, but, we make those decisions, but I always found healthy solutions. I don't revert to old behavior of once you hurt me, I'm going to do whatever I can and do to ruin your life. That was how I spent a lot of times, a lot of years. I think we were like 5 or 6 years sober before Jerry finally told me. He was like, I used to be scared of you. That's why I hung out with you. He only bought beer because I was a bartender. He only bought beer that I had to pop open with a bottle because he was afraid I was going to put something in his drink. I didn't know I was that kind of person, and here he is 20-something years later, we're still friends. And I wouldn't, and I keep people like this in my life. Now, Jerry's told me sometimes to my face some things that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And that's one thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has made available to me. I keep my circle small, but I keep my meeting network large. And I always make that suggestion when I sponsor someone, because if I go and I know me, for me, I will go and ask a shitload of people, and eventually I'm going to get the answer I want. That's why I like to keep my circle small, because I think I've only had out of my small circle only one time have one person tell me something different, but it was something different to the effect that it ended up leading to the same result. So I know if I ask enough people, I'll hear the answer I want to hear. So I know. Usually I just ask one alcoholic, and then whatever the answer is, that's what I go with, because I've learned that I don't need to hear what I want to hear. I need to hear what I need to hear. I'm gonna wrap up because I know we still have to do chips, but there's something I want to read. I forgot my reading glasses, so this is gonna be fun. That's another gift of the program. Eventually, you can't see shit on a page, and you have to have reading glasses if you stick around long enough. I just want to read this, and I'll close. The last 15 years of my life have been rich, and they've been meaningful. I've had my share of problems, heartaches, disappointments, because that is life. But I've also known a great deal of joy and peace. That is the handmaiden for inner freedom. I have a wealth of friends, and with my AA friends, an unusual quality of fellowship. For those people, truly related, first through mutual pain and despair, and later through mutual objectives and newfound faith and hope. And as the years go by, working together, sharing our experience with one another, and also sharing our mutual trust and understanding and love without strings, without obligation, we acquired relationships that are unique and priceless. There's no more aloneness with that awful ache so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before could ever reach, could ever reach it. The ache is gone, and it need not return. Now there's a sense of belonging, of being wanted and being needed and loved. And in return for the bottle and a hangover, we've been given the keys to the kingdom. That's one of my favorite readings, and I'm not going to tell you where it is in the book. Read it and find it. And once you read that story, like I said, it's actually a really good story in there. Again, I want to thank you so much for letting me share.